my name is Inbar, and welcome to a little thing I call The Point Is. Here I'm going to talk about whatever I want, but mostly media stuff, because when it's the real world, it's bullshit when you've got cartoons and video games. Sometimes it's gonna be straightforward reviews, but mostly it's gonna be rants about specific things. Now, I want to start with something uncontroversial for my first show, something that most of the geek world can pretty much agree on. Ooh, I know! Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2 sure was a mess. Yeah, everyone and their aunt has been reviewing the movie and talking about the fact that it's so damn dense. Clearly skipped into space and called it Wolf Star. But there's one point I feel most reviewers are missing, or at least glossing over. They're making a footnote of something I could bitch about for an entire video. And I will. I think that, for me, was the big failing of the movie. The death of Gwen Stacy. Not really about how much it was total fridging of the character, because it was. I mean, her dad, a much less important character in the last movie, got a heroic sacrifice where he acknowledged that Spidey was a good guy and ended his character arc, and she basically spent the entire fight scene being a glorified prop. It wouldn't have made any difference to the scene where Green Goblin ambushed Peter while he was buying eggs for Aunt May. Wait, I'm not talking about that right now. Yeah, so, the thing I wanted to talk about is how the death fits in with the rest of Gwen Stacy's subplot. Or rather, how it doesn't. I think the reason I'm focused on it more than other people is that I came into the movie pretty blind. It was a press screening, the movie came out in Israel a week before the US anyway. I didn't watch any of the billions of trailers that came out because I had better things to do with my life. Nerds! So basically, all I had going in the theater is what I knew in the first Amazing, and that Rhino Green Goblin and Electro are in it. And everything I knew about Spider-Man in general from being on the internet. Okay. So I was about as blind as Superman going to visit the glass factory. But I didn't watch all of the trailers the other reviewers did, so I guess I just didn't have Gwen Stacy is going to die hammered into my brain. And yes, I really didn't think they were going to kill her. Oh well, I knew they were going to kill her at some point. I mean, this is Gwen Stacy we're talking about. But the movie had so many villains and plot lines, I thought we were better off leaving that to Amazing 3. And so, when the big clock tower fight scene happened, all I could think about was, please don't kill Gwen, please don't kill Gwen. Not because I would be heartbroken if she died now, rather than a movie later, but because I felt it would fuck up most of the Gwen/Peter arc. I felt like that was out of place when you consider the rest of the arc, and I think I'm the only one who noticed that, because I went to the theater not thinking, well, I'm pretty sure they were going to kill her in this movie. So ignore the foreshadowing and notice how much it didn't fit in with the movie. Unlike a lot of people, I actually thought The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was pretty nice. Not the greatest movie in the world. Hardly. But it had some great action, good Spider-Man banter, nice chemistry between the leads. It did a much better job at being a superhero movie than some other movies I could mention. And while it was dense as all hell, I felt that until Gwen kicked the bucket, the writers were actually doing a good job balancing all the subplots they got. So why do I think that screws up the plot? Well, let's start from the end and work our way back. There's this whole bit that comes after it. We see Gwen's funeral, we see Peter standing by the grave for a few seasons, and then suddenly, what?
Peter hasn't been Spider-Man for months? You have to steal the super criminals, Goblin is assembling Sinister Six, then Peter is Gwen Stacy, everything is okay?
What the actual fuck? If you haven't seen the movie, I don't think I can convey to you properly how rushed and dense this bit feels. It's like the movie had another tiny movie attached to it on its back like a tumor. It's like it had a mini-me. It's like the movie was over and it started playing Amazing 3 in the theater, but like in triple speed. It's insane and really terribly paced. And it also doesn't fit in with the basic story structure. We're just past the climax. The two main bad guys are dealt with. The main love interest is fucking dead. And what does the movie do? Rather than slow down, what falling action is supposed to, just go faster and only really resolve stuff from the climax, and not really the movie as a whole. Okay, it also sets up stuff for later movies, but how is that a resolution? My best guess to why that happened is that ending with Gwen Stacy's funeral would be kind of a downer, and the studios would rather the audience leave the theater happy. Heck, I won't be surprised if the movie was supposed to end with Gwen dying, but it didn't test well, so they had to quickly cobble together a happy ending. But that still doesn't work. If you didn't want your movie to be a downer, don't have Gwen Stacy dies as the climax of your movie. And come on, guys. Peter is sad because Gwen is dead, so he stops being Spider-Man and New York is full of crime, but then he realizes life is beautiful and Spider-Man is back! It's not a resolution for a movie where Gwen was just one of many subplots. It's a movie. Throw in Mary Jane in a black suit and you've basically got The Amazing Spider-Man 3. As it stands, it feels rather lacking emotionally. I haven't seen enough of the Spider-Man less New York to feel anything. When The Dark Knight Rises did the whole no man's land thing, we actually got to spend time in the criminal run Gotham. The movie established it's the place. They showed it to us. But in Spider-Man, well, we get told by the news there's a crime wave, but outside of the Rhino, one bad guy. Before Spider-Man disappeared, he fought two of them. We don't really get to see it. Is Aunt May afraid of leaving the house? Are people dying? Is J. Jonah Jameson regretting all the nasty thing he ever said about Spider-Man? Oops, sorry audience, by the time you ask those questions, we already resolved everything. Not to mention it makes getting over Gwen's death seems way too easy. Yes, they said it was a couple of months, but for us, it feels like a couple of minutes. It's just a waste of plot resources. Stupid non-plots get stretched into major multi-movie subplots. And the second biggest guilt bump in Spider-Man's life after Uncle Ben, and that's saying something? We'll resolve her in one movie. Heck, how much when a better than movie 3, you suddenly get guilt-ridden again and have to go to the same arc only longer. But my biggest problem with Gwen Stacy's death in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is that the movie doesn't build up to it at all. But waiting bar, I hear you say. The movie does build up to it. It doesn't just build up to it, it fucking hits you over the head repeatedly with a hammer while screaming, Gwen is going to die! Have I mentioned Gwen is going to die? Oh no, voices only I can hear, I answer. They sure foreshadow it a lot, but they didn't build up to it. There is a difference. What's the difference, you're asking? Well, foreshadowing, let's say, someone losing his arm, would be to show that they're missing an arm in every other alternative universe save for this one. Or building up actually means setting up an arc where losing his arm would be fitting. And the death of Gwen Stacy, looking at the movie from the eyes of a hypothetical someone who doesn't know who these people are, just has nothing to do with the Gwen/Peter arc. This is what we set up. Peter loves Gwen and Gwen loves Peter. Peter promised to Gwen's dad he'd protect her and keep her safe from all of this before he died. Peter tried to push Gwen away, but can't really do it. And he's also a creepy stalker, but I'm not talking about that right now. And the guilt is making him see Gwen's dad everywhere. Hey, not really a bad setup. But the movie fucks it up by always portraying Peter's flaw not as he can't let Gwen go so she can be safe, but as he's being too overprotective of Gwen and needs to let her help him. It wasn't a solid coherent arc about the man putting the woman he loves in danger. It was building up as a superhero who needs to trust his love interest because she can help him, and then, after that arc got a resolution, Gwen helping Spidey fight evil poor man's dog by Electro. The movie looked at its watch and said, wait, I'm almost over and you're not dead yet, Gwen? Hey, Green Goblin, you need to kill Gwen. And so, all those scenes of Peter learning to trust Gwen and get over her father's death and his main character development and stuff, entirely pointless! Peter lives the climax the same man he started the movie as. Guilt-ridden and sure that being with him is a death sentence, and only truly gets a resolution of sort in the mini-movie tomorrow. Yeah, the main character's development mostly happens in the last minutes of the movie. Just great. And no, I honestly don't care about how it happened in the original story. It's an adaptation, it needed to stand on its own. Maybe it was done better, maybe it was done worse. I don't care. And keeping a bad plot point, because that's what happened in the comics, is still a bad plot point. Besides, superhero comics plot-wise are more like TV shows anyway. So what worked in a series of short, mostly self-contained story with a connecting arc doesn't necessarily work in a longer self-contained story. You can talk about how well the fight scene was done. You can talk about how iconic Gwen's death is. You can talk about all of that, but in my opinion, the death of Gwen Stacy versus the already messy plot of Spider-Man 2 was what an elephant is to a shaky yet carefully constructed house of cards. I'm not saying the story would be better if it was entirely predictable. You can make a surprising death and still fits in with the story. The point is that tragedy, like success, can just fall on our hero from the sky. And just like success needs to be earned against all odds through the character's merits, tragedy needs to feel inevitable to the character's flaws. And Gwen's death had nothing to do with the flaws of either character. At least not in the way the rest of the romantic subplot had been handled. Really, it seemed like they just did it because... Hey, she's Gwen Stacy. What can she do but die?
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. Spins a web any size, catches thieves just like flies. Look out, here comes the Spider-Man.